Welcome to Feed Your Mind. So if you go to your local lake or the ocean, you always see water moving constantly. Same thing with rivers and streams. Water is just constantly moving. Where is it going to? Well, in my last video, we discussed the complex river system of Earth and how the way water is distributed across the world is very complex and easily suggests intelligent design. And so if you go to your local pond, you won't see water move at all. You'll see a bunch of moss growing on the water and a bunch of lilies and all types of mold-looking green substances growing on top of the water because the water is not moving. That's because most ponds are actually man-made. Lakes, on the other hand, are naturally formed, and in a lake, water behaves much differently than a pond. Even on a day when there's no wind, you'll see that the water is moving on a lake. One thing that doesn't seem to be taught too much is that every single lake appears to be connected through a river system, and all the river systems are connected to the oceans. So really, there's just one body of water on this earth, and everything's interconnected. And so when you first look into the word wave, you will come across a physics definition of wave, which I could argue is actually related to the water form of wave because they share the same word. And so this physics definition describes wave as an oscillation accompanied by a transfer of energy that travels through a medium, which is a space or mass. And so this oscillation they're speaking of is a vibrating form of energy. And so we're talking about an active force here. And we'll dig into the book of Genesis later where we will cover how the book of Genesis connected an active force with water in the beginning. And so it says God's active force is moving to and fro over the surface of the waters. I can visualize some type of wave-like activity from that description. But like I said, we'll cover more of this later. So basically, science is describing a wave as a disturbance that transfers energy through matter or space. And so water is very indeed active, and we'll cover a lot of that in this video as well, because for starters, if your clothes are wet and you hang them out to dry on a clothesline, those clothes will end up dry in a matter of a few hours, and that's because water is always active. It's moving, turns into steam form, and it just keeps going and going. Water is really not meant to stand still. It's meant to keep moving. And so here's how I link the scientific definition of a sound wave to physical water waves is because there have been experiments where people have studied water, and when they expose water to certain sounds, the water will change its molecular structure according to whatever sounds are playing. And so the scientific explanation of what water waves are is not really explained. I think they're trying to say that it has something to do with the moon and the gravitational pull from the moon. And then they're also trying to say that waves are started by wind. But when I went out the other day, there was no wind. So I guess they're saying even the slightest wind will cause the waves. But then what about ponds? Why don't ponds have waves? And so the answers really are real vague and dismissive when it comes to waves in the scientific community. And so let's try to figure out the cause of waves here on Feed Your Mind. And so to be completely honest, even on a flat earth model, you wouldn't necessarily have to actually dismiss the moon explanation, because whether the moon is 250,000 miles away or 500 miles away, the moon could still have some type of force that is affecting tides and waves. Could there be some type of toroidal energy field that has to do with the sun and moon rotating that is causing waves? And so if the moon is actually affecting the waters and the waves and the tides, that actually could very well be the case on both a flat earth model and a globe model. Who knows if there's some type of force that the moon is causing, because they actually say the moon has something to do with people acting crazy when there's a full moon out. Apparently, it's documented that people have behavior changes when there's a full moon, and that's where the word lunatic comes from. So we don't necessarily have to dismiss the entire equation of the moon affecting tides and waves, but for this video, we're going to explore some other options as well. And so across my mind, is water some type of living force or something? Because water is everything to do with life. The human body is like 70% water. The earth is 70% water. Life cannot exist without water. Water is essential for life. We clean with water. We bathe in water. Water is just such a powerful force on this earth, and it's completely necessary for human life. I was pondering if water actually has anything to do with God's active force, because it says in the beginning of the Bible in Genesis that in the beginning there was pretty much only water, and God's active force was moving back and forth above the water. Because in the book of Genesis, it actually discusses how water was actually probably the first thing ever in existence, and it really seems like it has a lot to do with God, because it says God's active force was moving back and forth upon the waters, and that actually sounds kind of like waves, if you ask me. moving back and forth upon the waters. So is water some type of active force that has to do with God? And is that why it's always running? Is water actually alive? Another strange thing is that James Cameron made a movie called The Abyss, where the explorers ended up reaching depths that have never been reached before in the ocean. And they ended up running into intelligent beings. These beings were made up of water and were actually conscious and intelligent beings. And I actually have a very interesting hypothesis that water could be a conscious being or have some type of divine aspect to it. So click your notification bell and we'll go into a deeper discussion in a later video. And so this James Cameron guy appears to be revealing clues to us through his movies, possibly. And back to the human body being made up of mostly water. That has a lot to do with the blood because blood plasma is actually mostly water. And so the human blood plasma carries the white and red blood cells throughout the body. And so that mixture of blood cells and plasma and water is described as blood. And I believe the Bible also says the blood is the life. So that goes back to the question if water is alive. And so we covered if the moon has anything to do with the water, and then we also covered if water is living, if that's why it's active. And so the third possibility we will discuss in this episode is tides. And so tides are not known to be on lakes at all. Some have tried to document that tides occur in lakes as well, but then the results were very inconclusive. But we know for sure tides are on oceans. And then once again, in my last video, when we discussed the complex water distribution system of Earth, we cover how the rivers flow throughout the inlands of Earth and then make its exit out back into the oceans and the seas. And once it makes it to the seas, there seems to be some type of tide system where the waters come into the land and then they exit back out to the land. This happens about 2 times a day. And you can pretty much time when these tides will occur. And so this all could be related to kind of like how the heart works on the human body. And this whole discussion is real connected because we talked about how blood and water is connected and then how the veins run the water through our body and then how the rivers run water through the earth. And so if there's some type of pump or a heart-like system on earth, that would really explain a lot because the word earth and the word heart are actually the same letters. They're just arranged a little different with the H of earth in front of the E-A-R-T to make heart. And so they're pretty much the same word. So we got to wonder, is that a clue? And the Bible actually did say that mankind was made from the earth. And so the heart's like one of the most important parts of a human body. And it runs the blood through the veins, which is the life. And so the words heart and earth seems to be a clue that mankind is indeed made from the earth, and it's all kind of connected. And so there's said to be in the center of the earth some type of pump system that appears as a whirlpool that changes direction every 6 hours. And so for 6 hours it's pulling in water, and then for another 6 hours it's reversing and actually providing an output of water. And so that reminds me kind of like a pump system or a valve system of the heart. And so I discussed the North Pole in detail in my video called The Magnetic North. And I cover a lot about this North Pole area and how I believe there's something being hidden there. And I go into great details. And so check out that video if you get a chance. I think you'll find it very informational. And so if this North Pole whirlpool-like intake, outtake valve system is actually real, that means that we must begin to wonder if Earth is actually a mechanical-like structure or an organic-like structure. In my video Beneath Flat Earth, I've covered areas of this discussion where it seems like the Earth could possibly be a mechanical-like structure and then be built like a mechanical structure that's built to function how it functions because that's how it was designed, or it could actually be an organic structure where the Earth could be some type of living thing. You even got active plants like the Venus flytrap and stuff that actually move. So living things don't necessarily have to be conscious. And when I discuss water being a living thing, that doesn't actually mean it's conscious, but it doesn't actually rule it out either. But yeah, this whirlpool is probably the abyss. And then I uncovered this picture in my last video where this water was explained as ahead of the original river, where water originates from out of nothingness and flows onto the earth. So that could be like where the new water comes in. So it could be kind of like recycling out the old water. It falls into that deep whirlpool and then the new water comes out into the earth from Eden, the forbidden place where people are not allowed anymore. And actually that will be the third part in this series. I've had the complex water distribution video, and now I have this waves and tides video which discusses active water, and then we'll discuss Eden because it seems like Eden is actually still a place here on earth that is being hidden from us. And so I plan on covering that in another video. because when Adam and Eve were kicked out, that place was closed off from the rest of the world and protected from people actually making their way there again. And so that's going to be an interesting video. So make sure you subscribe and click your notification bell so you don't miss it. And so a lot of people really call Jay-Z kind of like an Illuminati guy. And so he's running this company named Tidal. And so does that have to do with the tidal waves that we discussed in this video? Do they really know that tidal waves and active water is not what science has been telling us it is? Maybe it has nothing to do with the moon at all, and water is actually the active water of God, how we kind of discussed in this video. And so before I get out of here, I would like to conclude with discussing a little bit about how Moses split the Red Sea. Now, was the water responding to Moses or what? You know, that's just something to think about now that we're discussing if water is alive. And that also makes me recall when Jesus told the storm to be still. He was on a boat with some of the disciples, and there was a storm, and Jesus spoke out to the storm to be still. And then the storm was still after that. So it was obedient to what Jesus had spoke out into the storm. And so with Moses splitting the Red Sea and the water responding to Jesus and Moses, it just makes me wonder if there's more to water than what we have been told. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Simply enter your email address at feedyourmind1.com. That way I can send you some cool news briefs throughout the week. It's completely free. I'm giving away free collectibles from my Feed Your Mind pop-up shop. Simply like, comment, and subscribe, and include your favorite flat earth proof to enter. If you feel this channel is important, please chip in $1 so I can keep this channel going. Plus, I'll link you up with some free videos before they even come out. Much more information at patreon.com/feedyourmind. Please click your notification bell. This has been another episode of Feed Your Mind. Thank you for tuning in. Signing off.